You're gonna wanna watch this if you like low budget horror and Jennifer's Body from Wish.com. Hi, this is Shadowscape Pictures. My name's Philip Olsen, and this is the review for Bitter Souls. After this chick, Kendall Kane, gets killed by these greaser boys, Lucian tries to bring his honey back with the use of black magic. Kendall comes back to life with powers to exact vengeance on these greaser boys. Now, this is a very low budget film, so I'm not gonna rip into it too hard, but if you really like low budget horror kind of comedy stuff, I think you'll really like this movie. But overall, this is a very critical review of Bitter Souls. The story itself is pretty basic. It's about a guy who likes this one girl, she dies, and then he wants to bring her back to life by doing some very shady stuff. That's the basic premise of this movie. It's got the classic greaser bully guys as well, which are just classic greaser bully guys. For some reason in this movie, they kill people with like zero emotion, and I'm like, are these people complete psychopaths or something? Is there something wrong with you? Clearly there is. And then they had to add Baron Samedi from Live and Let Die, which was very strange, but kind of cool as well, because I haven't seen Baron Samedi in a while. But his actual character's name is Emmanuel, played by Michael Hargrove, and I think he's the absolute standout in this movie, because he's just good, honestly. I think that's the best part of this movie, is Emmanuel. Besides him talking a lot, and you're trying to figure out what he's trying to say, and I was like, okay, what are you trying to say exactly? The audio is surprisingly good as well. I was kind of shocked by that. I wasn't expecting much to be good for audio, but it turned out to be pretty good, honestly. The music score is something to be desired, I would say, in this movie. The score is pretty inconsistent. It doesn't know whether it wants to be completely voodoo music or wants to be like some country kind of music vibes. I thought there's like one chase scene in here and I was like, the music is questionable at best. I don't know why they did that. But overall, the music score, I wasn't a big fan. They also had like this concert in there as well for one of the scenes. I knew they were trying to just support this band or whatever, but I don't think it was needed. I think that scene could have been trimmed down quite a bit just to really get the pacing going on it, because I think that scene dragged on a little bit too long for what it was. The cinematography in this film is actually pretty decent. The one criticism I do have on it is it looks like they just blasted a lot of the light on the actors, which makes sense because this film was shot in 9 days. I gotta give them a little bit of slack there. But overall, I thought it was like half decent, and I think that's pretty decent for such a low budget movie. I don't think you need it to be amazing or anything, especially shot in 9 days. I think they could have just improved a little bit, maybe shape the light, not just blast the light on the actors completely. They could have balanced the light a little more and stuff, but that's just my little critique of it. I did think sometimes with the color grading they went too heavy into like the blues and purples a bit. Like, I don't think it was completely necessary. You could have just left it, you know, kind of white light almost, moonlight, white light, and then the purple kind of vibe. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of that, honestly. In terms of acting, I think it's pretty well close to Korn. To be honest, it's really close to Korn. It's not like amazing or anything. I do think Michael Hargrove stole the show as Emmanuel or Baron Samedi. I do think this Kendall chick, played by Avriana Rose, I think her name's called, and I think she's basically, I thought she was honestly just like some OnlyFans chick, to be honest. I thought she was, just to have some like eye candy in the movie, essentially. But I do think for such a low budget like horror movie, I think it is good, and I think it's like half decent for what it is. The makeup in this movie is okay at best. It's not great by any means, but nor is it like the worst ever. The VFX as well is okay as well. For the amount of low budgetness to this movie, I think it serves its purpose, and it's nothing that like takes you out of the movie completely. So I think props to them for that. I do think some of the scenes in this film could have been chopped down, I think about 10 minutes of the movie could have been chopped because I thought the pacing was a bit slow here and there. I was pretty well waiting for scenes to come to an end, but they never came to an end. And that really told me that the pacing wasn't quite there. I think they could have just tightened up the editing just a little bit, and I think they probably would have had a much smoother ride on this film. There is a moral to the story, which I think is actually really good, and it's basically don't always follow your pleasures because there's probably going to be consequences from them. And I think that is a good moral to the story, because I do think people shouldn't always follow their pleasures, which seems to be something people do a lot these days. So I think props to them for having a moral to the story. It really teaches somebody something instead of just like a throwaway movie. So I do think that's a big plus on this film. My other thing was like the poster itself. It's not very good. I do think they could really work on the posters, especially for these like low budget horror movies. I don't know why they have these kind of run-of-the-mill posters exactly. I do think they should just have an actual photo shoot or something and just go from there instead of, because you can have like a photo shoot that's pretty cheap as well, because I've done it myself with Bagman Rising. We kept the cost to quite a minimal amount of money, so I still think it can be done regardless of what you think. Is this movie a true horror? I would say no. It's definitely more of like a horror comedy. I do think they could also lean into more of the comedy. I think they kind of like were trying to. I don't know if everything was intentional, because I did think a lot of things were funny. As it's stated, listed on the IMDb, it just says horror, but I do think this is more of like a horror comedy. I do think with lower budget stuff, especially if the actors aren't amazing actors, I do think you should lean into comedy, because you're more or less going to get a laugh out of the audience. That's just how I view it, and that's how I've seen stuff in the past where if they just lean into the comedy, it usually turns out to be pretty good and like pretty fun. And really, the audience is probably going to have a good time as well, even if the acting isn't amazing. I will say this isn't really like a festival movie or anything. This is like straight to Tubi. I don't think it's something that's going to be really remembered a whole lot. For me, honestly, it's just not my cup of tea. Yeah, it's not one of those movies where I would like to go watch again, but I do say props to the filmmakers for making this and at least trying. That's the biggest thing, is trying. This one thing I noticed with a lot of low budget movies is the charm, and it usually comes from your cast members. So what I would suggest personally is find some actors that have some true charm to them, and sometimes they're very hard to find, but once you find them, you'll know that your movie is charming just because of the actors. I do think this one does a bit with Emmanuel, played by Michael Hargrove. He does bring a level of charm, but since he's not the main character or anything, it kind of loses its charm a bit. I do think if this movie was more about Emmanuel's character, I do think they would have had a lot more charm. But once you find that actor that has charm, stick with them, because they will make your movie charming, and your audience is going to see that. Overall, this movie is just a low budget horror comedy. I don't think it's like super special or anything like that, and honestly, it's pretty well like a 3 out of 10 movie. But if you do like low budget horror comedies, I do think it's probably like a 6 at least. It's at least watchable, and you can have somewhat of a good time with it. If you do like low budget stuff, this is a movie for you. That's what I'm gonna say about this. That's my review of Bitter Souls. Like, comment, and subscribe for the absolute truth of films. And if you didn't like this video, bye, turn it off!